All right, so let's be real for a sec. When you think Friday night, cracking open a big old document of NYC council meeting minutes probably isn't what springs to mind, right?
Yeah, not exactly a rockin' good time, at least for most folks.
But stick with us on this one. This is about the meeting from back on May 23rd, 2024. And honestly, there's some seriously juicy stuff buried in here. We're talking the kind of stuff that really impacts how the city runs.
Oh, absolutely. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? We're talking local laws, how your tax dollars are spent. It's the nitty-gritty of city life.
Exactly. So we're going to break it all down. Decisions, debates, even a little bit of drama, believe it or not, from that May 23rd, 2024 meeting in City Hall.
Now, there's always a little something to keep things interesting, right?
Always. Now, the minutes mentioned Speaker Adams was there, but Councilmember Farias was the one actually running the show, acting as, let me get this right, President pro tempore for the day.
Right. Pro tempore essentially just means temporary. They step in when the speaker can't run the meeting. Just goes to show how collaborative these meetings really are.
Teamwork. Gotcha. Okay, so we've got the scene, the players. Now, I know these meetings have a whole structure, right? Like opening prayer, calling everyone's names to see who's there, all that jazz. But for our deep dive today...
You're cutting to the chase.
Exactly. And looks like for this meeting, the main course was a mix of land use call-ups, whatever those are, and more importantly, the committee reports.
Yes, the committee reports. This is where the real work gets done, you know. Before anything goes to a vote in front of the whole council, it's debated and fine-tuned in smaller committees. Think of them as the workshops where the sausage gets made without the questionable smells, hopefully.
So a sneak peek at the decision-making process. Got it. Now, speaking of sneak peeks, there was one land use call-up that caught my eye. Something about the Red Hook Coastal Resiliency Project.
Yeah, just from the name alone, sounds like it's about protecting Red Hook from flooding, rising sea levels, that whole deal. Big issue for coastal areas, so definitely interesting to see it here.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Something to keep an eye on for sure. Okay, but let's get into those committee reports because if I'm reading this right, this is where things get really good.
You are reading it right. Finance Committee was busy, passed a bunch of resolutions. One that really jumps out involves the Queens Plaza Court Square Business Improvement District.
Okay, and remind me what those are about again. I always forget.
Basically, they're trying to make the area more business-friendly, right?
Yeah.
Attract investment, that sort of thing. Anyway, they voted to both rename and expand it this time around, which can get a little controversial. And in fact... Don't leave me hanging.
The minutes show one lone council member actually voted against it.
Ooh, juicy. More on that later, I hope.
You bet. Now let's move on to another big player in this meeting, the Housing and Buildings Committee. Seems like parking structures were the stars of their show.
Wait, really? Parking structures? Like the places we leave our cars? Tell me more. Oh, there's more. All right. We're talking 3 whole local laws, all about parking structures. And not just little tweaks either. These seem like pretty substantial changes.
Okay, so 3 whole laws. This is oddly specific. Hit me with the highlights. What kind of changes are we talking about?
So the first one is all about safety. They're really digging into the structural integrity of these garages, making sure they can handle the weight they're supposed to. Load-bearing capacity is the technical term, I believe. Second one, they're throwing the book at anyone breaking the rules. Increased penalties for building code violations in parking structures. Sounds like they're serious about cracking down on any negligence.
Wow. Okay, going straight for the legal hammer. And the third law.
Third one is all about being proactive. Mandatory inspections, more frequent checkups, that sort of thing. Clearly, someone's worried about these parking structures.
3 very targeted laws. You're right. That's not just tweaking around the edges. That seems like a real statement about how the city views these structures. Makes you wonder what sparked that, huh?
Right. Was there some kind of event, a recent collapse or something that got everyone's attention? Or maybe it's just part of a bigger push to address aging infrastructure in general. It's a growing concern in lots of cities, not just New York.
Makes you wonder what those behind-the-scenes conversations were like, right?
For sure. That's what I love about these deep dives. You get these little glimpses into the decisions that shape our daily lives in ways we rarely even think about.
Totally. Okay, but before we get totally lost in the weeds here, remember that lone no vote on that Business Improvement District thing. Did they spill the tea on who it was?
They did. Remember that dramatic pause earlier? Turns out it was none other than Councilmember Yeager.
Yeager. Okay, name's familiar, but remind me, what's his deal? What kind of voting record does he have?
Well, I'm not walking into that minefield. Let's just say he's known for being a strong advocate for his district, and he doesn't shy away from challenging the status quo. definitely not afraid to stand alone if he thinks it's the right thing to do.
Interesting. So many possibilities. Maybe he hated the new name they picked or thought it hurt his district somehow. Guess it's part of the mystery?
Exactly. Trying to piece together the why behind these votes, that's half the fun.
Well, we'll definitely have to keep an eye on Councilmember Yeager, that's for sure.
Hmm.
But for now, let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about what they decided at this meeting, but what about the future? Anything new popping up that could have a major impact down the line?
You're talking about the bills they introduced but haven't actually voted on yet?
Bingo. What should we be watching out for?
Well, let's just say there were a few with some particularly eye-catching titles, and I think our listeners are going to find them very interesting.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. Hit me with the headlines. What are we talking about here?
All right, well, one that caught my eye right away was, get this, INT 0908 2024.
INT 0908. Okay, not exactly the most memorable name. What's it all about?
Yeah, not exactly catchy, is it? But don't let the name fool you. This one's about giving the city council more say in who gets appointed to certain city commissioner positions. You know, right now, the mayor has a lot of power in choosing those rules.
Right, right. So checks and balances, classic. Always a recipe for some good old-fashioned political debate. Okay, what else have we got on the roster of potentially earth-shattering legislation?
Okay, you ready for this? Buckle up, Buttercup. In 0926 2024, this one's all about the use of artificial intelligence by city agencies.
AI, whoa, now we're talking. Feels very 2024, I like it. So what's the angle? Are they trying to, like, regulate the robot overlords before they take over City Hall?
Not quite robot overlords. Well, not yet anyway. But I see what you mean. No, this one's all about setting some ground rules for using AI responsibly and ethically in city government.
Okay, yeah, because that could get out of hand real quick, couldn't it? So we're talking data privacy, algorithmic bias, all that good stuff.
Exactly. It's about making sure this technology is used for good, that it benefits all New Yorkers.
For sure, for sure. No one wants to see algorithms running wild on the streets in New York. Okay, last but not least, what's the final contender on our legislative watch list?
Okay, this one's INT 0935 2024, and it's about tracking where people go after they leave homeless shelters.
Oh, wow. Okay, so potentially a sensitive topic there. What's the thinking behind that one?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And this one's going to spark some serious debate. I mean, you've got proponents saying this data is crucial for understanding the bigger picture, like migration patterns, and for figuring out how to best allocate resources and support. But then you've got Crim, and we're going to be worried about privacy concerns, potential misuse of this information.
Right, right. It's like, how do you gather information and use it for good without, accidentally creating new problems or making existing ones worse?
Exactly. It's about finding that balance and honestly making sure the voices of people experiencing homelessness are front and center throughout the entire process.
Absolutely. So we've got checks and balances, the brave new world of AI, and the complexities of homelessness. Quite a lineup for one city council meeting.
Right. And it just goes to show, it's not always about the flashy headlines. Often it's in these meetings that seem, well, kind of ordinary on the surface that the most impactful decisions are made, the ones that shape the city we live in.
So true. And the best part is we all have a voice in those decisions. Stay informed, people. Made your voice heard. But speaking of making our voices heard, we do have to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
But we're just getting started. But yeah, you're right. We do like to leave our listeners with a little something extra to ponder, don't we?
That's right. A little food for thought, as they say. And
Yes.
this one's a real head scratcher. So we've spent this whole deep dive looking at this NYC council meeting, right, May 23rd. And wow, they covered a lot of ground. I mean, we saw them wrestling with everything from like making sure parking garages don't fall down on us
Very important.
to like the whole future of AI and what that means for the city. Big stuff.
It really is. Decisions that impact every New Yorker.
And that brings us to our final thought for today, our lingering question. It's about this push and pull you always see in city government. Like, on one hand, they need to keep things running smoothly, safely. That's where those parking garage laws come in. But then...
And then they've got to think about the bigger picture, right? Economic growth, all that.
Exactly. And we saw that with the zoning changes they were talking about. So the question is, are those two things, like, fundamentally at odds? Can you really go full steam ahead on development, new construction, all that, and still make sure everything's built to last, built safely?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's like, how do we build for tomorrow without, accidentally breaking things today, or worse, building things that won't even make it to tomorrow.
And is there a way for those goals to actually work together? Yeah. Could changing zoning regulations somehow make those parking structure rules even more effective? Or are those two always going to be pulling in opposite directions? No easy answers, but definitely something to think about.
It is, and it's bigger than just this meeting, right? Bigger than even New York. It makes you think about what kind of future we're building everywhere.
Okay, so big questions for a Friday afternoon. But that's what we do here on the Deep Dive, right? We dig into the nitty-gritty, we ask the tough questions,
Yeah.
and hopefully everyone comes away a little smarter, maybe a little more aware.
And hopefully inspired to get involved, make your voice heard.
Yes, 1,000 times, yes. Okay, folks, that's a wrap on our deep dive into this NYC Council meeting. Until next time, stay curious out there.